Record here.
It's red.
You're good.
We're good to go.
It is recording. All right, everybody. I want to invite you here to Zigzag, and we're going to be hearing from the Evergreen School District. So, Superintendent Speech, Assistant Superintendent, right? McMurray, Chris McMurray, and then Derek Brown. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the session for you so that you know what session you're in. Evergreen School District's executive team will discuss the one-to-one rollout from a soup to nuts approach. They will discuss the pain points of hardware selection, parent involvement, board integration, staffing, students, teachers, and their deployment. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
That's a lot to talk about, and we only have 6 minutes.
I will give you the mic too.
I don't know. Do I need a mic? Can you hear me in the back? No. Okay, cool. Mic? Better? All right. Cool. So, thanks for the intro. This is a great event. My first time here. It's great to be up on the mountain. It's good that ACPE ordered us some weather like we have. Appreciate that. A little bit of sun, soak it up now. My name is Chris McMurray. I'm the CAO, Assistant Superintendent. I do teaching and learning. That's my gig up there. We're in the Evergreen School District, and what we like to kid about is that nobody really knows where Evergreen is. They say, well, where's Evergreen? Isn't that up by Seattle? We're like, no, we're in Vancouver. And they say, oh, BC? And we're like, no, it's down. That's the other Vancouver. So we're a relatively nondescript evergreen shrub in a nursery pot. We like to refer to ourselves as shrubbery. So we're just going to be up here. We've got our whole crew here. There's almost as many of us as there are of you. This represents, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a bit. This represents a lot of the brain power and manpower that makes stuff move in Evergreen. And so they're going to have an opportunity to share some stories, and that's really what we're going to do. We're going to share some stories, whatever the pain points that we've had over time in this sort of rollout. We do like to characterize our one-to-one device rollout as really not at all about devices, which is sort of the cool part of the whole thing. So without further ado, I'm gonna turn over the mic to John, and maybe we can have the crew introduce themselves.
So I'll start. I'm John Steach, Superintendent for Evergreen. This is my first year as superintendent, but I was 3 years deputy superintendent after being in Canby for 3 years as superintendent down here. And one of the things that I was tasked with when I was hired as deputy superintendent, in addition to having a 2.5-year job interview with the board to decide if I was going to be the next superintendent, was they said, we have a vision. The board and the current superintendent had been to Mooresville, North Carolina, and decided we were going to be a one-to-one district. And when they said that, we looked around, and they hired Derek Brown and myself initially and said, make this happen. And we looked around the district, and I'm jumping ahead in the slides, but our district had 5,000 XP computers and a thin client system at the time. And they said, we're going to be one-to-one, and we're going to do it and have take-home devices 6 through 12, and you're going to do it in 3 years. And that was the job that I was given along with Derek when I entered the district. So the main theme that we're going to have is that this was really a team effort, and that's why we brought a lot of people today. And I'll just pass it down the row and let them introduce themselves and share what their role has been.
Good morning, everyone. Derek Brown, Chief Innovation Officer. And so John's told you a little bit about the story. It's awesome, but none of it could happen without the people you see here and the big team behind us, the 50 plus. And this is on the curriculum instruction side, the teaching side, teacher librarians. This is an all hands on deck, from the school board down to the kids, to mom and dad, to the bus driver. It's everyone. What a pleasure. Sounds good.
My name is Derek Dizio. I am relatively new to Evergreen School District. I think 8 years, or 8 months, excuse me. Feels like 8 years. Anyway, prior to my time here at Evergreen, I was 8 years at Portland Public Schools in a similar role as a network supervisor. And that's where I met Derek Brown. He said that he was over here at Evergreen, and took the opportunity to get back in that. It's great. So that's my introduction.
I'm Rob Gardner, Director of IT Application Services. So my team encompasses our SIS, HR, finance system, record center, and shop, any third-party applications, integrations with third-party partners.
Hello, I'm Robin Rich, Manager of Technology. I'm tasked with the deployment of all the devices, the configuring of all the devices, and ensuring stability with the devices that we put into place.
Bryce Ray, I'm Manager of IT Systems and Security, so I get to do a lot of the jobs in IT that nobody else wants to do. I work with Rob on the Google Admin Console and Active Directory, group policy, security piece, and so on and so forth.
Good morning. My name is Tim Lauer, Director of Ed Technology and Library Support. Previous to coming to Evergreen, I've been here about a year and a half. This is Port Republic as a building administrator.
Cool. So, being a teaching and learning guy, I like to throw up a little tab. This is one that we have coined to sort of describe what we're going to talk about today and some of the critical components of the work that we've been engaged in. And so really smurging tech, learning, and science, and really all the smoke and mirrors that we live around with the teaching and learning. This is kind of the engine behind that, and this stuff is real. So I'm going to hand it over to John. Oh, sorry. Pause.
So actually, Chris was going to talk about
I
resources.
was thought about this. That was good. Behind that QR, or at that link, is a bunch of information. We have some sort of highlights that we're going to talk about today, but if you want to go deeper and get more info, go there, because that's where all the stories are. There's audio from teachers, there's kids stuff, there's a bunch of other things going on in that site. Whether or not it'll work on your tiny device remains to be seen, but that's where the stuff is. So, go.
Okay, you want to jump to the next?
Right, what you mean?
Or do we need to go back a little bit? So why don't you go back a slide, and I'll go ahead and start talking.
Okay,
so when John Dieter, the previous superintendent, and the board started having this discussion, it came about because Dieter they had read Good to Great a ways back, 10 years ago, and they had adopted a BHAG, which was no dropouts. And Evergreen's a district with changing demographic. We've got 26,000 students. We're the 6th largest district in Washington. At one time, we hit number 4. We're the east side of Vancouver, that you can see on some of the resources on there. But we started off as a fairly affluent East County school district, and over the last 15 years, our free and reduced lunch has grown to where we hit almost 50% 2 years ago. We're still hovering about 47%, and we have over 1,000 homeless students each of the last 3 years. So as our demographics changes, we've had cultural diversity has been introduced to the district. We were historically very Caucasian. Now we have about 3,500 ELL students. And those things presented a challenge to our teachers. So the vision was, how are we going to create an equity school system that all of our students actually have access to learning? So from that, and looking at the BHAG, the board and John took that trip I talked about to North Carolina and said, we have a lot of kids who just don't have access to technology. And they had a pretty simplistic view of what the one-to-one rollout was going to be. But they realized they didn't have the expertise at the time. Evergreen had cut way back during the recession, which is why we had XP computers in critical roles in 2014, because we had not invested in technology since 2008. We had just stuck with what we had. We kept teachers in the classroom, and we laid off a ton of administrators. So as the money came back, John sees that opportunity to bring in some people into new positions he created to say, I want to bring in some people who can have a vision on what this actually can be. So he and the board said, this is about equity. This is about kids getting access to learning. Make it happen. And it was very difficult for him. The first year when Derek and I were on board before Chris joined us a year later, it was tough. We got pushback from the existing systems, from people in systems. There was some fear within the system of certain individuals that had a lot of power that weren't bought into it. And we didn't make a lot of progress. So at that time, what we decided to do is we needed to start to change the culture of the district. So Derek and I put together a roadshow, we called it. And we went out and started talking to the community and to teachers and sharing that vision. I used a graphic that showed the internet in real time and how much information is being generated. I talked about the rate of doubling of information going from 14 years back in the 80s to 14 months now, and how kids can't just learn facts, they have to learn how to process facts. I talked about 2/3 of the jobs that our kids are going to work in don't exist today. And how do you prepare kids for that type of an environment? Because our district had never had those discussions. And then, oh, it just flipped out of my mind. I just drew a blank. But we went out and we talked to the parents, and we had a whole series of those. And I also talked about the freedom to fail. That was the key thing that I was going to touch on. And I used a couple of graphics, and one was a WD-40 and a picture of a Dyson vacuum cleaner. And I went out and told our teachers, and I pointed at it and said, you know what the significance of these are? And the WD-40 is because it's water displacement formula 40, and 1 through 39 didn't work. And then Dyson actually built 5,127 prototypes on his vacuum cleaner before he ever went to market with the first vacuum. So what we did is we gave permission to fail to our teachers, even before we had the authority to really move forward. And at the end of that first year, Chris joined our team. And I hate to kind of put it this way because I'm almost telling you got to bring in new blood to make this happen. But sometimes if you don't have the people that have the right thoughts and the right vision, you do have to bring new blood into the organization. So Chris joined the team, and we really started to move forward. We got traction with that we need to do this as a teaching and learning effort, not as a device effort. It has to be about personalized learning. And we brought in a consultant to help us put our thoughts together, not to tell us what we needed to do, but to facilitate our discussions on how do we create a personalized learning environment with technology that's really focused on instruction. So we spent an entire year with our admin team, and when you talk about a district of 26,000, we're talking 125 administrators and coaches. We spent an entire year of professional development once a month for 4 hours defining personalized learning and coming up with a district definition that was very clear that's in those documents. We refer to it as our EPS Essentials of Personalization. And it was that work of getting that in front of our administrators and getting them bought into the vision of this was not about the device, it's really about teaching and learning and what happens in the classroom. About that time, John Dieter had read the book Multipliers, and very pointed discussion with us where he called us in and said, I realize that I don't have the same vision that you do, but as the superintendent of the school district, I know the direction's the right direction. You have 51%. Go make this happen. Just keep me informed along the way so I can keep the board informed. So it was very fortunate of us to be given the freedom to be able to actually go out and make those strategic moves that we wanted to make without having to go to the board for approval on every step of the way. And since that time with becoming superintendent, the board has actually changed their form of governance into a coherence governance similar to policy governance, and given me full authority over the policy manuals and the daily operations of the district to where I can continue as superintendent now to modify the direction of this overall program. Because if you don't have that flexibility and that real-time ability to change, you can't adapt to all of the problems that you're going to hit along the way. You know, when we got started, we went to a couple of conferences and we told people we're going to roll out devices in 18 months and we're going to hit this 3-year, and people told us you're crazy. You don't want to do it in 18 months. And we said, no, we're going to do it. We're going to do what nobody else has ever done before. And we were right on time to go to 18 months. And I know I'm way off on where these slides are. But we actually went out and we had our definition of personalized learning. We had identified some key people that in the buildings that we had an application process for schools to apply to become what we called innovation centers. So we said we want our innovators to go out there and actually start to get advanced professional development with a group of 8 to 10 teachers in each school of 7 schools out of our 37. And we want to do it right with a small select group. So we went through this application process. We started the professional development. We had, after a delay of Windows 10 implementation that pushed us back about 6 months, we had finally bought the Surface 3 device, the great student companion of the Surface Pro that we had bought for our teachers. And a week before delivery of the Surface devices for 8,000 of our students, Microsoft announced they were discontinuing the product. So we said, thank you very much, take them back. We don't want them. So then we said, let's go to a Dell device because Dell is safe and Dell will work. So we spec'd out. One of the things that was driving our decision for Windows 10 at the time was because we had looked at math and science and the critical nature of having digital inking within those content areas. So we said our kids got to have a pen and they got to be able to write on the device. And at that time, it had to be a Windows 10 device. So we got with Dell, took a look at their devices, spec'd out one, had tested it through. We tested about 4 devices with teachers. It came up as the #1 device. Thought it was a safe purchase. We bought $10 million worth of them. We got the first 2,000 into our system, and they kept hitting hyperspace. They would jump back 50 years. They jump forward 50 years. And when they're 50 years, when it's 1960, it has troubles connecting to our network. So we brought Dell in and gave them 3 weeks to fix the problem. And I remember being on a phone call with, Michael Dell? Right before Thanksgiving, saying you have 10 days left before we're returning $10 million worth of merchandise. We had to return $10 million worth of merchandise. They finally told us it's a BIOS problem. We can't fix it. We're putting our effort into the next generation of the devices. And for the 2,000 that you already received, we'll give you credit for Chromebooks that you can swap for. And, we look back at that now, and we can laugh about it. And I mentioned a little bit ago that we wanted to do this in 18 months instead of 3 years. What we really found out is we had put devices out there. Teachers had started doing some things based on what we had implanted. And I think it probably says zombie apocalypse on one of these.
Yeah, we can wrap this one up with the zombie apocalypse.
So we referred to it as our zombie apocalypse. What we tried to do with the innovation centers and what we called the studio teachers, which are the ones that were identified for the advanced professional development, is we told them up front, and even had a little Minecraft video of zombie Minecraft. We said, we're going to bite you with the zombie virus of personalized learning. And your job is going to be to become fully infected and then go out and bite people in your building and bite people in other buildings. And we want this thing to spread. Yeah. But what we had found is that the virus was spreading and the devices weren't there. They had seen the possibilities. They'd seen project-based learning, problem-based learning, flexible learning, trying to change time and space with learning. And we've been a district that has deep-seated in workshop instruction to where we believe kids have to be doing the talking and to be doing the learning. So we don't want our teachers up front, and we actually were at the point of a teacher revolt for lack of curriculum just before this initiative because teachers said it's way too hard for us to do this without the content and the resources available. So once they got a taste for it, our teachers were begging for it. Derek, Chris, and I could not walk into a building and into a classroom without a teacher pulling us aside and saying, when do I get my devices? I really need them because I want to do this really cool thing for kids. So
if I could just add, the aspect of all of that, it sounds like it just sort of happened, but we did have to be really explicit about this is going to be hard work. It's not going to be easy. We're going to work really hard, and there's going to be some pain, but we're going to get through that, and there's not an option. We're going to get there. And that was a pretty clear message that we had to make sure that people understood. Should we continue on this one? So if I can add to that. So the cultural shift was real, right? And so for teachers to understand that this is not really about the devices was kind of a shift, and they weren't kind of ready for that. And I mentioned bait and switch. It was kind of that, and it felt a little bit like, hey, we're going to do some devices, and oh, wait a minute, we're changing your job. Was a little uncomfortable, but it's the right thing to do, right? We've got to do this because it's what matters most. It's for kids, and having to keep that in front of us at all times means that we're not focused on adult problems. We're focused on kids' needs, and that's the whole reason for this. Parameters for resources. The whole cultural shift changed how we think about adoption and curricular resources. We don't buy paper, right? We don't deliver pallets of books to the schools. We're digital, and so that shifts stuff. We're not on a 7-year adoption cycle because our information moves way faster than that. In 7 years, something better is going to come along, or there's going to be updates to the resources that we've already adopted. So we had to rethink our processes and our policies around adoption and get people's mindset in a different place, because we're moving really fast. We're moving fast, and we've got to keep up, and our systems had to do that as well. PD was a big deal. In the previous slide, it said that we were going big, and we did, right? And so our PD model echoed that, and our PD model actually embedded experts in the field in every one of our schools, so that everybody's moving along at pace, right? They can move at their personalized path. However, because we need everybody to be on the same page, we're going to move forward together. So at this point, we have every school who has been in participating in this endeavor, which is every one of them, is moving forward with personalization of where kids, and they are all speaking the same vocabulary, same language, and using similar tools and pedagogy.
Yep. I want to talk about the hard part. And when you heard John and Chris say going big or go home, we had to change job descriptions. So we had to have lots of conversations with human resources, with staff. How are we going to make this work? Our consultants helped us put a framework together, but we needed to make sure we had the right people. They were on the bus. We were all heading the same direction, but in order to set them up for success, we had to change roles and responsibilities. Starting with teacher librarians, starting with instructional coaches, and then even the team you see here. We had to move people around to set them up for success, to put them in leadership roles, supervisor roles, get training for people, not just PD for teachers, training for technical staff. So this was truly a monumental effort, and sitting here speaking with you and listening to the team, we've been doing this for 4 years. I kind of forget sometimes all the hard work that we had to do to make it happen, and we're still going through it. We're not over. This is continuous. It's not a one and done. It's a progression. We'll continue to learn, and we'll continue to evolve.
You know, and when we were mapping this out, you know, we had the Gantt charts and the whole project flow thing. And at one point, we sat down and started discussing that this is way more organic and needs to be way more flexible. And I developed, and I think it's in if you go to the website, I developed what we refer to as the double helix, that shows how instruction and assessment are intertwined, and instruction or assessment should inform instruction, and then instruction should again drive the assessment. But in order to improve those over time, what we had to do is we had to interject content or curriculum, and we also had the whole software hardware aspect. And we knew that there was a couple of key points along the way that you couldn't move forward beyond a certain point towards personalization until we had content, hardware, software, and instruction all at the same place at the same time. And that was part of our vision, was how do we pace each of those to get them to meet up at the moment that we pass out those devices, which I think for a while we lost our focus on, and we're more focused on getting devices out. But after the device disaster, when we regrouped and looked at it, we said this really has been for the best that we waited to get devices out until the instruction had caught up and we had the digital content available and ready to go. The other thing that we've done that I think was critical to this whole implementation, and we've done it not just with the technology, but we have a whole equity initiative running, which this is a subcomponent of equity initiative. The other huge subcomponent is social emotional learning. So we as a district have said we have to have parallel structures from top to bottom within the organization. So when we talk about personalized learning in the classroom, the reason this isn't a traditional PowerPoint is because you've got the ability right now, if you got through to the website and on the QR code, you can be exploring whatever you want and looking at whatever you want while you're listening to us, and you can personalize your experience in this room. We do this with our professional development now for our administrators. Our administrators do that for their professional development in the buildings. And so that the teachers are experiencing it as a student, so that they can then apply it in the classroom. We're doing the same thing with social emotional learning. We start our professional development meetings with administrators. We spend 45 minutes in community circles, going around and having discussions. And they were very light questions to begin with, and we've built up that foundation to where now we're actually having deep discussions on the critical issues on implementing restorative practices in our district, but we've created that safe environment so our principals see that. Almost every staff meeting happening in the buildings, I don't know if almost every, but I would say probably 60 to 70% of our staff meetings start with community circles. And I would say every student in our school district experiences at least one community circle a week, if not 5. And
sorry, I was going to add a little bit about in terms of the parallel structures, following what Derek was saying in terms of realignment, and those parallel paths go down all the way to the school level. One of the early things that we had to do was make sure that we had this merging between tech and ed, right? It's peanut butter, your peanut butter is my chocolate. And so for Derek and I, we were like work spouses, right? So wherever he is, I am, and we're saying the same thing, and we're saying it's not about devices, guys. Guess what? And so that was a critical piece because they could see that he was saying this isn't actually about the machines, and I could say it really isn't about the machines, and people would nod. But what we also had to do is make sure that the rest of this organization that you see in front of you has a mirror on the teaching and learning side. And so just beneath us is a director level. And so Tim Lauer has a work spouse. His work spouse is my director of C&I, curriculum and instruction. They travel together, and where you see Tim, you see Becky. And they say the same things, and they're always tag teaming. Beneath those director levels are specialists. And there's specialists on the ed side and specialists on the tech side. And on the tech side, they're actually out of the classroom. So they're not talking about plugging in a dongle. They're talking about how am I going to leverage technology to help kids learn. And that's a change. That was a shift for our organization.
I think another huge cultural shift that we had to make in Evergreen, and it kind of ties back to our lack of identity that we joke about, is Evergreen's probably the biggest small district you've ever seen. We grew up as East County, very small, and when the 205 bridge went in, we exploded. And we went from a district of 2,000 or 2,500 kids to a district of 27,000 in about 20 years. A lot of growing pains, 379 portables, which is part of the reason we passed the largest school bond in the history of Washington State this last spring at $695 million. A lot of construction to get rid of at least 200 of those portables. But within that growth, we have 21 elementary schools that operate like 21 school districts. So when I came in, the previous superintendent allowed a lot of that autonomy to happen so that they could customize their approach towards the contextual situation of their students. One of the things that we discussed right off the bat is if we're going to have a loose tight, there has to be a tight. We were so loose that we had 5 different math curriculums being used in our district, and sometimes as much as 3 in one given building, and even teachers at the same grade level in the same building using 2 different math curriculums. So during my second year, I went to the superintendent and said, I have to fix this. If I'm going to move this whole thing forward, we have to have some tight. And he gave me the permission to go out and have some very difficult conversations that have changed probably a 40-year-old culture of autonomy at the building level. And I told the principals flat out, we're going to have one math curriculum. And we had spent 2 years developing our own K-5 math. And I said, we're going to try to prove this out and see if it's viable. And we're going to pilot it, test it, and get feedback just like we would with any other math curriculum. And we will adopt a math curriculum within 2 years. And we did that. And there was some pushback. We had to go through that process. But people started to see, with the mobility that we have in our district, which in some schools is up to 35-40%, it's what's best for our kids. So we all had the same end goal in mind. It's just getting agreement on how to move forward. Then when I actually got named superintendent a little over a year ago, I went around and did a meeting with all of my principals because I wanted to give them my non-negotiables. And one of my non-negotiables was, you've had too much autonomy in the past. I'm going to start giving you more and more of a box to live within. But if you can't live within that box, you not only have permission, you have the mandate to come meet with me, with Chris, with Derek, with anybody who's setting up a box and talk to us about your context, and we may change the box for the whole district. And it's that whole philosophy of we need to be communicating, but we have to have some standardization. We had the same discussions with the devices, where people had gone out and just bought stuff. Because we had XP computers, people wanted other things. They had just gone out and bought it. And we finally just drew a line in the sand and said, no, we're not only going to not let you buy it, we're not even going to let you put it on the network anymore. And we started shutting people down. The other thing that was on one of these slides is the go slow to go fast. And you can imagine the potential stress level in an organization when you make this much change this fast. I mean, in this year alone, we mandated PBIS, Swiss data systems. We passed out 26,000 one-to-one devices. We implemented 9 curricular areas of digital content and passed this huge bond all in 1 year. And the reason we've been able to do this was because we built the foundation for 2 years, and we kept telling people this is a 5-year program or a 5-year transition. And for 2 years, we referred to it as year 0. Not just 1 year, but we had 2 years of year 0 to tell people, relax. You've got 5 more years after this to get there. We just want you to start trying some things. And that was kind of a huge culture shift with the district of eliminating that fear of failure and getting that permission to try, as well as we've got some standards we expect you to implement, but you do have freedom within those to be able to personalize.
The other thing that I add to that, really go fast, is that as soon as people got a taste, they wanted to run with it. And they're like, I got this, let's go. And we had to hold some folks back a little bit because either they really weren't as ready as they thought they were, or we weren't ready to catch them. Maybe in a couple of instances, our organization for support wasn't quite where they need to be. If they fall over there while they're running, can we catch them successfully? And so in a lot of instances, we had to have conversations with principals or teams to say, slow up just a little bit. This is awesome, and let's give you what you need to get to that next spot. So that was some learning for us and for the organization.
Another thing that we had, and one thing I didn't cover at the beginning that we wanted to, is a little bit of our background. And some of you know, those of you from Canby know my background, that I was never a classroom teacher. I had a 19-year career as a chemical engineer, 2 years in the chem plant in East LA and 17 years on the Hanford side as an operations manager and engineer. And after 8 years on the school board, fell in love with education, went back to school, got an MBA with an emphasis in human resources and school finance, stepped down off the board, got hired by the district, ran support service for 3 years, HR for 4 years, went back again, got my doctorate and my superintendent credentials before I went to Canby as superintendent. So one of the things I do is I look at things a little differently than a traditional educator might, from an engineering perspective, business perspective, as well as that education leadership perspective. Plus, I surround myself with high-quality people that are the true experts when it comes to teaching and learning in the classroom. And with that, I push pretty hard on projects. And I stole the James Cameron. I stole a lot from Joe Morlock. But working with him for 3 years, oh, he's in the back. Don't let your head get too big. But there was a James Cameron quote, and I know I'm not going to get it exactly right, but if you set your sights unbelievably high, your failures will exceed everyone else's success. And I share that with our staff on a regular basis. That, as well as my defining quote as superintendent, will be Dewey's, if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. And we have to be constantly about change. But with that James Cameron quote, one of the things that we talk about is, I'm going to push really hard, and I'm going to say we're getting devices out in 18 months. But I had to sit down with Derek on wasn't quite day one, but right at the start of the project, and I said, I'm going to push, but you have to know you have veto authority every single step of the way. So if you think we're not ready to buy these devices, or we're not ready to implement, we don't have the infrastructure, the wireless, the connectivity, whatever it is, you can say stop. And he's only done that a couple times, usually only for a few weeks.
Slow down.
Yeah.
You never know.
But he always has that permission, and I'm never going to question. I'm going to look at him and say thank you. Because you have to trust the people that you have around you as a leadership. Just like John Dieter gave us 51%, I have to make sure now as superintendent that I empower them and I listen to them if we're not going to meet those goals and milestones. So we're pushing on a couple projects right now on a data system. We're having discussions with Microsoft on coming up with a data system that will look at every bit of assessment data, every bit of data we have around kids, and create a portal dashboard for students, teachers, and administrators to look at that data, as well as use machine learning to take that, analyze it over an algorithm that we've looked at and been developing internally that focuses on student growth rather than, it's a combination of growth benchmarks based on contextual criteria of academics, language, and social emotional learning, with factors that would trip those triggers in that would modify the growth model. But Microsoft's working with us on that, because we think that needs to be in front of kids, and kids have to have their own data. But while we're working on this, kind of pie in the sky, I'm still looking at these guys on a regular basis saying, are we going too fast? Do we need to stop? Or are we ready to march forward? So that's part of that leadership organizational aspect. And also my role also is to maintain that connection with the school board to where they see that we're still working towards results, still working aggressively, but to keep them up to speed enough to understand that sometimes you have to stop or really go very slowly in order to pick up speed. And right now, like Chris said, if I go out in the buildings, which I do twice a year, I meet with every principal and walk through classrooms, the one question I've had this spring is, how's the stress level in your school? Are people freaking out, or do they feel like they can just immerse themselves in this new environment and move forward at their own pace? And I think we're in a pretty good place right now. And one of the things we also try to communicate out is, with all of this change, I described a landing pad for teachers that we're trying to land on. And it's a stable landing pad preparing for change of 2 to 3 years is our goal, where we won't change systems, won't change devices, and they can immerse themselves in the instructional aspect of it. Then I told them all bets are off. We aren't bought into Chromebooks. We're not bought into Apple, to Microsoft, to anybody. We're bought into what product best serves the needs of our students today. And so every decision we make is, this can't be a one-way road. This can't be a tangent that takes us off forever with one company or one product.
So we're going to wrap up and leave time for questions. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we communicate is some thoughts, and what we really appreciated in our process of learning was going to another district who's been doing what we want to do, and saying where did it hurt when you started this? And we want to hear from people, partners, how did you get here, and how can we learn from the things that you experienced? Very early on, we went to places that had been doing this for 10 years, which is awesome because it's really shiny and it works great, except that we were in year -1, and we really needed to talk to somebody who's in year 2, because they're close, right? They're close to the beginning of this. They still feel the sort of a twinge of pain when they don't have devices that arrive when they're supposed to. Those are the people. Right. So that's a big deal. Partners, don't go it alone. We learned that. We learn and steal from everybody, and so we try to connect. And as soon as we have a question, first comment is, who'd you talk to? Did you reach out to Miami-Dade? Did you reach out to wherever, and get some information from those guys? John mentioned being willing to fail. We do it all the time, right? And we're super transparent about it. We're not hiding behind this. We're learning too, and we have to be super transparent about that. John mentioned the vision. We're going to shift, right? We're going to continue to go that direction, and our path might meander a little bit, but we're still going there. And everybody still knows that we're going there, but the path might change. Another aspect of that is that there's no ego, right? We're not like that. We're just here to do the good work, and nobody owns anything more than anybody else, and that's actually sort of cool. And so those are sort of the learnings that we sort of came out of this with when we began.
I think I had 2 other things that I really wanted to share. One is, you cannot over-communicate. And our district had a history of the superintendent sending out 2, maybe 3 emails a year to all staff. So when I got there as deputy superintendent, I started sending out a monthly update on what was happening on the tech, and sometimes I got in front of us, and Derek would say, you're promising stuff that we can't deliver on, and then when the devices failed, I had to go back and share with staff, here's what happened. But with sharing those emails out, I get emails, responses to almost every email I put out there saying, thank you so much for the transparency and the information. I've never known all the things that go behind some of these decisions. In addition to tech, I shared how a snow decision is made. And teachers, I got about 10 emails back saying, wow, you do all that to make a decision on whether you're going to close school? I had no idea. But it's that transparency that can really build the culture of the organization. And of course, I have one other. And the other thing is similar to what Chris was just talking about, is flattening the organization. Previous superintendent had 5 direct reports and then lines down there. I now have 10 direct reports, and even with my school visits, I tell every one of my 10 direct reports, if you want to join us for the school visits, you can come and you can sit in a room while I'm talking to the principal. You can come walk through the classrooms. So it's including people, and every single meeting we have, we tell people it's open. These are the people that have to be here. Anybody else who wants to be here on cabinet, feel free to drop in if you've got the time, because your input is valued just as much as the people that are going to have to make those critical decisions. I don't want to cut you out from getting your input. You just may not be there the last day when we have to make a decision. I think those are the key points.
What questions do you have?
You talked about you had to do some changes with. You talked about you had to do some changes with job descriptions. And I was just wondering, with all the work that you did, what were your conversations with labor management like? And I see that coming from a district with a very strong labor situation that is very resistant to anything.
I was going to say, you were in most of those more than I was.
Well, what's interesting is the president is part of our tech team. She's on our team. So that's even really interesting. But we always go with the why. Why are we doing this? Again, no egos. This is not about any person. It's about what we're trying to accomplish for the students. The students are at the center of everything we're doing. So we just try to get ahead of it and have conversations with the union. Hey, here's what we're thinking about doing. Here's where we're going. Now, we didn't start there. First, we're just trying to chase the job descriptions, trying to do what's best for the team, and I realized that's not going to work here. We have people that have been in the union and are concerned about their roles, responsibilities, and so we had to do that. It wasn't painful. It's just communication. You can't over-communicate enough. And so we have an amazing HR team, and so we just sit down and talk about it. We don't always end at the same place, but we end up where we need to be, and and we're still going through that.
Job battles in the last 4 years.
And at the end of the day, it's all about the work. We want to make sure that people are set up for success, and then there's a little clause at that end, other duties as assigned. And Robin's really good at that. People get out of line and say, well, what about other duties as assigned? It's temporary. We're not going to do what we're doing forever, but we have to do this right now because it's what's best for kids. Who else?
So I'm in a district where we're doing a pilot program right now with a couple of middle schools, and I guess my question is, as we've deployed, we went from I cover about 5 schools, and this one school has made my ticket numbers go from now I represent 33% of the entire problem tickets for the district, so I have about 80 hours of work. And at least my experience so far has been that what the gentleman from NYU was saying with the daycare thing is that now that there's been a transaction with the parents implemented, there seems to be a dynamic shift with how there's respect with the devices. And have you tackled any of that issue? Because I would love to hear something.
Anybody will take it? Go for it.
Well,
Yeah. Let's spread this around.
We had to take on devices 6 through 12. Initially, right off the bat, we had you have the influx of trying to figure out how you're going to process the equipment living within their guidelines. You have a student that destroys a display. You give them a new device, they destroy a display. You give them a new device, they destroy the display. So it's just coming up and coming up with new ideas of how you're going to do that. Well, in Evergreen, we shifted to, because we're a no-fee district, our students don't pay for any sporting events. We're just a no-fee district. And I was empowered to really work on this from the ground floor up and stuff. So we instituted the first one is on us. You busted the device, we're going to fix it and put it back in their hands. That same person busts that same device. Well, now we give the power back to the principal. Then they have 2 choices. They need to take a path. What are you going to do for this student now that is just continually is breaking devices? Well, we created the what's the term? Day users. So they'll come in the morning, grab their device, go to the school, do their entire work, and then they come back and they check in and stuff like that. And that changed the percentage dramatically right up off the bat because kids started recognizing if you abuse the device, you no longer get that take home anymore that you used to have that was at your fingertips. So it really started dramatically reducing. I mean, the first month and a half of the rollout, I probably saw 45 to 50 destroyed displays. And in the last 3 months, I've seen like 15 come in. So it really dramatically just all the way across the board. So it's the buy-in from the very top to the very bottom, the principals and everyone else staying involved. So that's how we reacted to it. Our ticket count went up initially. We're leveling off now. I have each one of my teams. I have my entire tech department set up in their teams, and they support a tree. So the high school to the elementary school, that's one tree. So that team is in charge of that. They were in the 150 to 250 category. I now have 3 teams in under 10 digits. So teachers are now responding. They're getting immediate service. Everything is changing all the way around. It's just, for the lack of a better term, ride the storm. It'll get better.
Before the next question, I just have one quick thing I wanted to add is you can never get started too soon either. So my first year, we did what we called I stole it from Joe again. We called it Teacher Innovation Pilot Grants, or TIP grants. That was basically the innovation grants from Canby, where they could apply for a classroom set. And while many of those teachers ended up not even being our studio teachers and being the leaders, at least they got the devices and they started talking about it, and we phased that out. But what I felt at the day one when I got there, I told Derek, I said, we have to get devices in teachers' hands and kids' hands this year somewhere in the district to at least get started to create that foundation to move forward next year.
At the middle school level and the high school level, how do you know when a new kid comes in? Do you have go through your register and they tell you, or how?
They have spares. So every school has, and Robin did an amazing job with distribution. We just make sure that we have enough devices so there's spares. You have to have hot swaps. They can always put a ticket in. So we use Destiny's resource manager fallout system. And so all the devices are there. They're assigned to the school. One breaks. They check it out, assign it, check when they come in, pick it up. And then when it's time for a new one, they pull it, swipe it, or scan it, and off it goes. So,
I was just going to say, have you guys done any kind of campaign for sense of ownership with the one-on-one take-home program? This, in a one-on-one rollout that I've done, didn't do that at the beginning, but then switched to that. Tremendous. Have you guys done anything like that?
Hashtag don't break it.
Yeah, right. We had to do a lot of that. And it started with, again, roadshows, communication, procedures, acceptable use. We have a 12-page guidelines. It's a ton of information, but then we condensed that to a summary form that parents had to sign, and students. So there's a sense of, we used to call it digital citizenship. Well, it's really citizenship. It's responsible use. And we're at a point now where everyone signed it, and then those that haven't in the elementary, we're going to be making some decisions. If you haven't signed it, mom and dad, what are you going to do? You're going to really keep your child from learning? This is the new book. They're not taking it home in K-5, but they need this to access the learning. So we're having lots of conversations. Tim goes out, Robin, the whole team, Derek goes out, principals call us and say, we're having a tech night, we're having a parent night, will you come join us? We pull in the teacher librarians, we're bringing in the coaches, and we have conversations with parents. So it's really all hands on deck, and this happens during the day, at night. We have to meet them where they are and have these conversations.
One in the corner.
So I was just going to add to that. One thing that we're seeing with the students taking the devices home, I think the parents are becoming more interested in what the student is doing on the district-owned device. So in a web filtering kind of aspect, right, getting a lot of requests for reports and what the student's doing and control of the device after hours and those kind of things. So that's one thing we're looking for in a web filter replacement, is having a parent portal so they can generate their own reports and see what their student's doing, what's being blocked, and all that kind of good stuff. And maybe even have control of their browsing activity after hours outside of school.
So I know you guys in the previous session had mentioned Wi-Fi access for students that don't have Wi-Fi at home. Did you guys leverage any tools to kind of filter out, like, okay, these 40% of students don't have that. There is no Wi-Fi. We drilled into the neighborhood. They don't have it. I know you guys have made a deal with Xfinity. How did you, because you're not broadcasting it to the entire school, like anyone can have Wi-Fi. How did you kind of get those to those students so these, all of them can have access to the tech at home?
That's a great question. So John and I had an idea, something again no one else had ever done. We went to Comcast and we said, we want to piggyback on your Xfinity. They kind of looked at us and said, we just want to partner. We're not asking for a handout, but we think we have 1,000 to 1,500 kids that need access. And they said, well, what do you want us to do? And I said, well, it's username and password. We can't hand out hotspots to everybody, but this is just username and password. And they said, we'll get back to you. So it probably took 6 months having conversations with them. They took it back to Philadelphia and had conversations with headquarters. And lo and behold, now we're offering this to our students. It's almost Grouponish in a card that kids have. We've had communication with principals, with counselors. They know their students. So when the students self-identify, they have all of our IP addresses and MAC addresses, so it's only for our devices. Mom and dad couldn't get it and try to connect one of their personal devices. We only have maybe right now less than 100. The usage is really, really low. We're actually surprised by that.
It's so early. It's so early enough.
But it's still early. The device has only been in the hands of these kids for less than 6 months. I expect that will spike when we do checkouts next year at the beginning of August school year. But this is for anyone that needs it. It's not free and reduced lunch. John mentioned we have 1,000 students that are homeless. It's for those students that don't have access. Comcast also does checks and balances. So there's a form that needs to be filled out. If mom and dad, based on that address, say they don't have Comcast, and come to find out Comcast says they do, then permission's cut off. We haven't run into that, but we try to put a couple of things in place so people aren't basically stealing from the district.
Just to add to that, so there are a lot of resources for students. So there's the Sprint 1 Million project, where all your high school students who basically qualify as free and reduced lunch. I have 5,000 students over 5 years who get a puck, and it's free. They just have to go through the process. AT&T has a $5 a month deal, and you can work with them. T-Mobile has an $8.50 puck deal, where they will change it based upon the usage. All of these have unlimited usage for the kids. It's just that when they get to a threshold, say of 3 gig or 5 gig, then it drops down to almost like dial-up. So the kids learn, I don't run video through it. I don't burn through video. I choose what to do.
And ours is unlimited. The patent we were able to negotiate with Comcast, and we tried all of those options. We're in a unique area. We tried T-Mobile, and we've tried Sprint. Those just didn't work. The district's not that big, but just where we're located geographically, those other ones didn't work for us. So that's what we did.
Is that Comcast free?
And the reason that we haven't advertised is we're paying $10 a month on those things, so it's $100 a student a year. So, but what we've done is we've talked to the principals, to counselors, and we said, you need to go out and identify those kids. And if you hear about one, make sure you get a code in their hands, because we don't want, financially, we did this without running a tech levy. I mentioned earlier that we had cut a lot of things in the recession, and as Washington State restored funding, the previous superintendent and the board really set about $10 million a year aside to support this project that we've done without any tech levy at all. We've done this within our general fund budget.
And I think one thing we found with the pucks too was if they got that device from us, then they looked to us to support that device at home. So we wanted to stay away from that as well. So.
You talked about putting your devices into Destiny. Do you put all of your devices into Destiny so you know what student has each device, or do you just have your spares in Destiny? And do you keep track another way of what student has what device?
That's a great option. We can hand it to either Rob or Robin.
Yeah.
The answer is
Rob.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Rob. That's a Rob.
That's a Rob.
Yes. Yeah. We have everything in Destiny. That's what we use for our inventory, resource manager. We use everything from buses to devices. So it's
check out to the student, 6 to 12.
How does that checkout go? Like the start of school?
Right.
Yeah.
We'll let you know. Yeah.
They all go to the library. I mean, how are you planning that, or have you planned that?
We'll let you know. We're defining that right now with our principals. We just met with our elementary principals, which is easier because they're in carts. Secondary, we met with our secondary principals, in fact, last week. We're defining the process, but we're doing it together. We're not sure yet. We'll let you know. Check-in's easy, but how we hand them out at the beginning of the school year, we're going to do that together. We'll let you know. Come back next year. Oh.
What is your plan for your team to fix the machines or replace them, or what is the sustainable support that you're going to be providing for those? Is your team going to become a self-maintainer and fix the devices, or do you plan on tossing it when it's broken?
Yes. We are self-maintainers, but Robin's the man.
I'm big on trying to get all of my tech certified, no matter what it is, whatever the product. I just believe in the certification process. We put everything into place. We didn't buy the extended warranties for our equipment. We've kept that money set aside. We're logging every part that we put in. From top to bottom, so we're going to have a very nice little roadmap of what we need to buy in bulk to be able to continue on. And it just keeping the service just going. But yeah, all my techs are completely, we work on every piece of our equipment. There's nothing that I send out to anyone. Everything that we do is all in-house.
If the device is under warranty, did you get money back from the manufacturer?
There's only 2 programs that I know that actually participate in that, Lenovo and HP. And your HP your techs have to be highly certified to get your paychecks from them. Lenovo's a little bit different, but HP will pay every tech. You put it in a logic board, you get $35. You put it in a logic board inside a laptop, it's $65. So there is that. We're using Acer, and there is no buyback on that. We didn't go in the full route with them. We're not we're a service provider, but we're not an authorized service provider. An authorized service provider meaning anybody could bring their equipment to me and I have to fix it for them. So we did the one step backwards from that and stuff. So we have full access to all their parts. We order everything under warranty, everything through. So we process everything. So it's just a training of your techs, getting them to that level, and then just moving forward.
You want to talk about the student piece? Give a little teaser.
Yeah, Acer has a really cool program out right now, and I'm very thankful. I went to bed with them. They promised that I'm going to be the very first. I came from Federal Way.
Oh, and where's HR?
What did I say? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, for the lack of better words, they're a new partner. Okay, I don't know if that helped any better. I came from Federal Way School District, where I established an unbelievable student tech program. Was taking sophomores, and by the time they got a lot of my students that I had, by the time they were seniors, they were leaving with their MCSEs. So we're going to establish that here and stuff. We're in the slow. I've only been here. Derek D and I got hired on the exact same day. And
8 years ago.
8 years ago. So in the big whopping 7.5 months that we've been there, we're starting to establish this. But Acer reached out to me because they heard that I had a really big student tech program, and it was the president or the vice president of Acer. I was really shocked. I just got this phone call out of nowhere. She says, "Did you really establish that program?" I said, "Yes." She says, "Would you like to work with us?" And I said, "Please explain." I have a program that we're trying to create. We would like to use you. Establish your program. What we're going to do is we're going to give curriculum for you, get them their A+, and get them into their MCSA, along with their Acer certification. Would you be interested in piloting that for us? And of course I said,
John's here.
This was great to learn about.
I told my boss.
We're waiting. We're just waiting for it to happen.
So one other thing that
You
we're
empower
doing,
people and they do great things.
one other thing that we're doing, I think, is pretty key to the whole one-to-one initiative is instead of just setting the devices out, setting them, forgetting them, we're partnering with ACPEnw to get usage statistics on the devices, right? So we could see which schools have adopted, their Chromebooks as part of their curriculum more or less, see if schools or grade levels need, more instruction on how to use the Chromebooks and those kind of things. So usage statistics is key.
So you did go with Chromebooks. I don't know if we ever talked about the actual device.
Yeah, yeah. And that was an interesting development because we were ready to go back after the Dells had failed. We were going to go back out and do another Windows 10 device. And Intel came to us and said, hold off. We're working with multiple providers that are going to have a digital ink and Chromebook coming out in the next 3 months. So we had to go in front of a bunch of our teachers at one of our kickoff meetings of our Innovation Center's studio teachers and tell them, we got to delay this for 3 to 4 months because we just got inside information there's going to be a better device and it's going to be a Chromebook. And that was devastating to them. But again, it's that transparency of we've got new information, and based on that information, the best path forward just changed, and we're going to move forward on that. And they had that information within 24 hours from when we had the information and made the decision.
So was the devastation the delay or the device?
The delay and the Chromebook. There's concerns about Chromebooks. Our teachers had secondary. They had the Surface Pro 4, and elementary had a Dell laptop that was a piece. Yeah, the Attitude. It's a piece of nutrient that we just took back, and we actually installed desktops and gave them back a Chromebook that's the same Chromebook that the kids have, and we're going through pains with that right now. But the way that we've got it connected, you can mirror the Chromebook on the desktop. You can then project it, and it gives the teacher much more flexibility than what they had with the Dell. They're just not happy that they can't take it home and have full Windows 10 access at home, and they got to work through Office 365 instead of Office Desktop.
Are you providing an tethering device in the classroom for the teachers? We're using Google for Education, Google Cast for Education. Now that they have the Chromebook, there's no need for additional Chromecasts or Sunbeams or any of those other Action Techs or no. Okay. Don't need anything additional.
Yeah, so the desktop is attached to the projector, right? And then they cast to the desktop.
Okay. And so the teacher completely knows that.
Yeah.
And then we use ACPEnw as classroom management tool, and so the teacher's able to control and look at all the students' devices as well as give the student control to show whatever work they're doing.
Yeah. So in 6 months, we went from 100% on Windows 10 to Chromebook and reevaluating our learning management system, reevaluating everything because it was the best path we need to move. And that's what we've told people is we're going to be agile, and even as a 26,000 student district, we're going to be agile and move based on what the student need is and the best products that are available.
Derek, what software are you using for filtering?
We're still with Lightspeed. Mark, the question was filter. Who are we using? We're still with Lightspeed. Anyone else?
So I heard you say you use an absolute. So you using that for tracking as well?
Yes. Device recovery tracking.
Yep.
And that was a good thing with parents when they were worried about what if somebody steals this device, and to be able to communicate that if somebody steals it, you basically file a police report, give it to us, we take it from there, and it's no cost to you. And we mentioned no cost. Our district has eliminated all school supplies for elementary kids. We provide everything at the beginning of the year, so elementary kids don't bring supplies. No athletic and activity fees. We have supper programs. We re-implemented field trips, and we have after-school busing for activities that we provide at K-12. So we've done some things in equity and access that complement exactly this with the rollout of the one-to-one.
Thank you, as a parent.
I was just going to ask quickly, so I was joking to George about the teachers, right? Like imagine getting a Surface Pro taken away and being like, here's your Chromebook. But I'm wondering if, I would think that a benefit of that would be, that's excellent modeling, right, for the students. So they have to show, like, here's all the great things you can do, and I can do it on the same device as you. And I think that would be really empowering. With your, realignment, I guess, of your goal of being on instruction, have you seen an increase, or are you seeing that in, like, best practices and modeling what the teacher can do if the students on that same platform?
Good question. So, so that was actually a consideration. And it was important for the teacher to have the same device, at least one of them. And we sort of waffled back and forth between what do we do with a Windows device versus a Chromebook. We're giving a Chromebook to the kids. Initially, we were going to give the Windows device to the kids, right? And it was going to be the Surface, which was going to be awesome. But it has to be purpose-driven, right? The selection was purpose-driven. We needed for the kids to be able to ink, and we held that line pretty hard. And so the teachers are now able to show, I can write on my tablet. I can actually flip my Chromebook around and turn it into a tablet and write out my whatever it is that I have to write. And the kids can do the same thing. But they also then have their desktop that they can use for whatever else they need to do in device work.
Do you happen to have LMS?
Kind of. Can I speak to that? Yeah. So this is
interesting. You'd ask.
So LMS is kind of weird. When I hopped in, these guys had picked a management system. We went with It's Learning. We're still with those guys. But as we've evolved, the concept of LMS is different now, right? And so for us, LMS is a system of components that allows access to certain functions that an adult or a kid would need to have. And so we've got this really cool tool called ClassLink, which you may have heard about. It's brand new technology. It's really shiny. But it does that for us, right? And so it's an ecosystem. And it does a great job because if I need to access a blending platform, we have a bunch, right? We have It's Learning. You can blend learning in there. You can use Google Classroom, or you can use Apara. And so we know that we have learners in terms of teachers who have different entry levels, right? And so some teachers have never touched a device or thought about blending instruction, and it freaks them out. And we say, well, guess what? Google is super easy. Try it. You can do it. And then we help them with that. And then pretty soon, once they're hooked, we say, hey, you know what? There's this other thing called Apara. It does all that, but it does these other things too. Try that. And then we say, once they're more sophisticated with the blending of the instruction, if they reach a point where they need to have gradebook, we say, hey, you know what? There's this It's Learning thing. We can help you figure that out too. So for us, it's an ecosystem. One size doesn't fit all. We need to be able to match the needs of the learner, and by that I mean the adults.
I just wanted to add about Chris mentioned the ecosystem. This digital instructional ecosystem that we created in the SSO is based on ClassLink. So when students log in, Rob is amazing, and we're working with Tim. And what they've created is an environment when the student logs in, it takes them right there to their dashboard. Everything they need is an icon, and it's based on grade level, based on their school, and staff as well. So all of your resources, whether it's your gradebook, Skyward, your forms, whatever you might need, it's right there. And that's a living, breathing thing and managed daily, if not hourly. Anybody?
It's like a digital backpack for a kid, and we needed to create that for the students because if you're a second grader, there's a bunch of stuff you're going to need to hold your thinking and be productive. And it's not app service for us. We had to go with things that kids could actually create with. And so when you enroll in one of our schools, you get a digital backpack, and it lives in ClassLink, and a certain collection of things shows up in there. And when you go to third grade, it might shift a little bit, and when you go to high school, it's going to shift a little bit. But you get all the curricular resources that you need. They're in there.
Are you getting digital books for the elementaries?
Yeah.
If they don't have
Yep.
secondaries?
Yep.
Okay.
One thing I didn't mention, and if you went to the data sharing agreement session yesterday that we popped into, we went through all the pain of vetting out how are we going to create our own data sharing agreements, who are we going to hold the line with. We spent a ton of legal fees over the first year until we finally settled in and said, we're going to come up with these 2 templates that we're going to give to companies, and we're just going to tell them, you either sign this or we're done. And, we're large, but we're not huge. So we had a couple people that said, no thanks, and we cut ties. It's great to hear what's happening there. But again, we looked at it and said, before we went into it, we also looked around the country. So when we said look for good best practices, we looked at Houston in Baltimore County and Denver, and took a look at them and what were they using for data sharing agreements? How could we leverage what they had and be able to move forward? But hopefully, I'm really optimistic about that working, because for the smaller districts, you just don't have that leverage. And if we can get a standard across the Northwest, it'll help all of us. And you won't have to spend the thousands and thousands in legal fees that we did.
So another aspect of that was the learning that the teachers had to do. You can't just go buy an app and load it up to your classroom, right? There's this weird thing called personally identifiable information. And so getting your kids' info out there is a bad thing, in case you haven't heard about that. And so the other thing that we needed to do is sort of wrangle all the apps that people had been out there buying. It was like the Wild West, right? There was everything out there. Senior Wooly was out there, and I'm like, what even is that? And how is that used? It's crazy. So we had to sort of rein in and create a process for how do you select tools, and for the C&I group to vet the hundreds of things that people could ever want to use, and come up with a system. And Tim's team did a great job of creating a system that allows a and I'm going to let him fill in the gaps, allows a teacher to see, here's the stuff that we've looked at. It does good things with kids, and it keeps them safe too.
Yeah, basically, we looked at what was already previously approved. So we have a process for people to submit a ticket, and we do that for like Chrome apps, extensions, and then we have a number of iPads and such, so we have that process too. And then we used like an interactive database, put all that stuff in a database, so you can search by OS, you can search by device type, you can search by curriculum areas, and to see what was approved already. So rather than having to go through the process and not knowing if Senior Wooly was approved or not, you could go there quickly and find out. And then the other aspect is we also, with Chromebooks, I hear some, well, gosh, you went from Windows 10 to a Chromebook, and actually one of our team, who is no longer with our team, was making a joke, oh gosh, you're giving them an Etch-a-Sketch, which, I kind of take a little, I don't look at it that way. You're looking at a device that works, and that actually gets on our network and has long battery life. And quite frankly, when I go to all of my instructional meetings, my staff meetings, all I see are people with tabs open in Chrome browsers. I mean, for the most part, most our users are not, they're not programming on the devices. They're not taking advantage of some of those high-end things. We have CCTV classes and such that do have those, but Chromebook is a really reliable, good device. And again, the work that Rob's group has done in terms of single sign-on, hooking into ClassLink, getting kids right where they need to be, and then our kids taking that stuff home. It's that same process. When you go home, they're using a mobile filter, that type of thing. So anyway, the database we have, you can search to see what we have, and then we have a process for submitting and asking for other things too.
Do you have a plan for printing?
We have a plan for printing. I say
don't.
Don't. Has 22,000 of those devices now, and I asked Chris Bailey 3 years ago, what are you going to do for printing? We have an LMS. Everything is going to go online. And then I asked him last fall, and he said, we capitulated. We have Final Cut or something like that.
I look at
paper cut.
Paper cut.
Yeah, we print. They print. I'm teasing.
It's a process. I mean, especially one of the things we try to stress with the PARA is that teacher has a window into that kid's drive and can see his or her work, right? And so we really want to stress and push a collaborative work environment with students, right? I shouldn't give an assignment, hope for the best, and then on Friday I'll look and see how you did. I should be catching up along the way and guiding you and helping you. And that's what we stress is that the printing of things, and again, as teachers learn about the various tools we have for them, we see less of a demand, but there is a knee-jerk reaction like, my God, I got to be able to print. And not really, but we're going to help you get there. And so we do have some intermediate kind of things. We do have paper cut available, but we kind of make that painful too, so that you got to have to go down to the library to get it, kind of thing. And do you really
part of the wellness program? You got to get some steps in.
Always make it easier to do it right than it is to do it wrong.
But all of our teachers can print.
Yeah.
That's fine.
In the bottom line, all of our teachers can print. Just
the other aspect of this, there is a printer in every classroom, which I was shocked. I mean, coming to Portland and you just printed to the office. I mean, you didn't do it, right? But there's a printer in every room. And again, using Hapara, if I really need Bryce's document right now, I can open up Hapara, I can double click on his document, and I can print it from my machine, and there it is right over there. So That's the aspect of trying to get that, and we're out of time.
You want to say final words?
I don't know if I have any great final words. You know, I've tried to give you some of those main philosophical drivers that we've used, and those were Derek and I started it the first year, and then Chris joined in. We used to meet once a week. We set Thursday afternoon aside every single week for. It was about 90 minutes is what we had on the schedule, but it was at the end of the day, and sometimes it turned into 2-3 hours. But it was always coming back, and it was without even an agenda, but it was talking. Decision on moving forward. And so we would sketch stuff on the whiteboards, we would have those discussions, but we made sure that all three of us were directly connected. I handled all the policy and politics and communications of it. Chris is teaching and learning, and Derek was the tech side, but we had to bring all three of us together as a unified group in order to drive this thing over we went from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 3.5 years, which is light speed when you can really consider 5,000 XP computers in 2014 within our business system. So thank you very much.
We have to keep the walls smooth because we got the big section. So if you want to talk, come on up. Oh yeah.
Did I tell you what I heard Trick say? It was up for me when you ride the horse and buggy. Well, wait for the future, dude. You might think that's cute, but it's really telling you. Yeah.